All right, hello class. We're going to start the Intro to Theater lecture today. So we have completed the fiction unit with the closing of the final text, and now we're going to move on into drama and theater. So this is a little bit different. It's going to involve a shifting of gears in a way. So I would just like to go over with you a couple of sets of notes. First, there's the how to read drama notes, which you can find in the notes folder on Blackboard. There is also the comedy versus tragedy bit of notes. And then I would like to finish this lecture, this intro lecture, by uh, reading I'm going to try to do this by myself, reading a play to you, a short play, a comedic play called The 15-Minute Hamlet. And I'll try to do different voices and stuff like that. It may seem a little goofy, but I think it's important to have fun with theater, right? Otherwise, what's the point? So let's go ahead and talk about the how to read drama. So students sometimes find reading plays challenging because plays are typically not meant to be read. They are meant to be performed. So if you were to read a play thoroughly before or after a performance, you might understand it better because you would then be able to compare the text to how the play is being executed. But there are lots of different elements to a play. It's usually not as detailed in terms of like visual descriptions and things like that. A lot of it is left to the imagination. A lot of it is left to the interpretation of people who put on the play. And so it can be a little confusing as a work of literature. But once I think we go over it, it'll make a little bit more sense. So reading a play, especially if it was written in a different time and place, which these plays are, or if it has a different language than the reader is used to, which these plays do, it allows the reader to carefully study the play and research the parts that need closer attention. You're going to have to do some close reading here. I am not going to quiz you over these plays because they are so old, but you are going to need to kind of slow it down and may need to Google some terminology and figure some stuff out. Um, so sometimes theatrical productions omit parts of a play to produce a faster paced play. This often happens in productions of Shakespeare plays, which can be very long. Directors of plays like Hamlet or Othello often have different interpretations, and they may change the setting from the Renaissance to a more modern location to make it more relatable. This happens a lot in film too, filmic renditions of Shakespeare's plays. The individual actors also have different versions of their characters. In Hamlet, the actor playing Hamlet may envision the character as truly insane or only pretending to be crazy. These different interpretations vary between productions. So if an audience member wants to know which interpretation is true to the text, the audience member can read the play to form a new opinion. Some readers of plays try to envision the stage, the actors, and the blocking movements. However, some readers view the script as a form of storytelling without the detailed descriptions found in novels. The absence of detail can be a problem because, like, it'll say in Midsummer Night's Dream, they enter a forest. Well, what does that forest look like? You know, is this the pine grove behind the house, or is this an old growth forest in the deep woods? You know, those are very different locations, but sometimes the text doesn't give you everything. So we have to talk a little bit about theatrical conventions. Most plays utilize similar conventions or techniques to present the story. Some basic conventions, excuse me, I have allergy problem today, relating to language are the chorus from the ancient Greek theater. The chorus is a group of people who comment on the action, not necessarily singing their commentary, although sometimes they do, but they are really just kind of telling you what's going on from sort of a meta framework perspective. There is the soliloquy, which is a character's speech or monologue when alone on stage. Hamlet has a lot of those. To be or not to be. That's a soliloquy. And the aside, when a character speaks to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. So the fourth wall, if you're a Deadpool fan, you know what the fourth wall is. That's when Deadpool turns to you and tells you what's going on in a very candid way, as though he acknowledges the audience. This happens a lot in Renaissance drama and even on up into modern renditions of plays where the characters will look at you and tell you what's up or give you some bit of insider information that you don't always have. Some other types of conventions include multiple marriages in comedies, multiple murders in tragedies, the use of masks, disguises, mistaken identities, and the use of gore or the supernatural. Plays can be written in verse or prose, depending on the theatrical conventions of the literary period that the play belongs to. For instance, Elizabethan and Jacobean plays are almost entirely written in blank verse, specifically unrhymed iambic pentameter. Plays following the neoclassical age tend to be written in rhymed iambic pentameter couplets. So the sort of the era of the play has different conventions, and we're going to see what that's all about. The elements of the play, especially the plot, the theme, and the characters, tend to weave into each other. The action of the play sometimes stems from the motivation of the characters, and the reader determines the theme based on that interpretation. The best way to study the different elements is to consider the play as a whole. Some elements or conventions of drama always appear in plays written in specific periods of time. So here are the different eras that we're going to go over. I won't read all of this, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about the different eras of drama. The first era of drama is ancient Greek drama, which is 600 BCE to 146 BCE. This is about, about 450 years or so. And this is the origin of Western drama. This is where all of the original plays were written. A lot of Greek plays, a lot of Shakespeare's plays are based on Greek tragedies or comedies and plays that happened in ancient Greece. Theater was considered part of a ceremony that honored Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, fertility, and revelry. We don't really have gods of wine, fertility, and revelry anymore. I mean, those are pretty good things, right? But Dionysus, he's called Bacchus in Rome. He's like some depictions of him are like as I think like a satyr or like a horned like goat figure almost, but he likes to get drunk and have a good time. That's pretty much Dionysus. So the theater is part of that like party vibe, that for lack of a better term. From ancient Greece came the Greek tragedy and the tragic form. While none of the works of Arrian or Thespis survived the 6th century BCE, these were some of the first writers of early Greek tragedies. The 5th century saw the tragic form begin to take shape, and the most well-known playwrights of the time were Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Aeschylus developed a form for plays that separated them from singing, dancing, or storytelling, and some scholars call him the father of Greek drama. Sophocles further developed the dramatic form through plot construction, and Euripides produced sympathetic portrayals of women, realism in his plays, a mixture of tragic and comedic conventions, and religious skepticism. A major convention of Greek theater was chorus, which is a group of people that sings, dances, and recites lines, usually with or about the characters. Aristotle's considered the first critic of theater, and he kind of tried to pin down what comedy and tragedy is about. He says that so Greek tragedy had 6 plot elements: plot, characters, theme, language, music, and spectacle. He also determined that tragedies present a reversal of fortune and a downfall of a royal or high-class figure. Some tragedies may have characters realize their own contribution to their downfall, but that was not necessary. They don't need self-awareness. They could just be a tragic character. He also claimed that tragedy generates feelings of pity and fear, but there's also a catharsis, so like an emotional relation to the character and an emotional process that goes on in the hearts of the viewers. Other conventions of Greek tragedy include the suffering of the tragic hero and the hero's tragic flaw, which is often hubris or extreme pride. The character always has a tragic flaw. Sometimes characters in comedies will have a tragic flaw or a flaw as well, but they usually overcome it. The only ancient Greek comedies to survive belong to Aristophanes. Greek comedies contained plots that stretched over long periods of time, many locations, and had a large cast of characters. Aristophanes' plays made fun of society, politics, or culture. Greek comedies tend to have fantastic plots. Some conventions of this type of drama include addressing current issues, a chorus, and ridiculous male costumes that included masks. Okay, Roman drama. So the Romans basically they copy and pasted Greek culture a lot. A lot of the gods are the same. I mentioned Dionysus is known as Bacchus in Rome. And they drew heavily from the Greeks, and they didn't really develop any new practices, but they popularized theater in a way that it hadn't been popularized. They adapted Greek comedies to suit their audience. They added music. They emphasized the idea of eavesdropping, leading to misunderstandings. And this adaptation continued on and can even be seen in modern renditions of film and plays, television. The early plays have been lost, and the only playwrights whose works survived are Plautus, Terence, and Seneca. Plautus was the most popular playwright in ancient Rome, and his works focus on romantic comedic episodes. Terence's plays focus on characterization and language. Because few Roman tragedies and only a few references to tragic playwrights survive, they do not believe that Romans actually favored tragic plays. So that's a pretty big difference from the Greeks. Then we have English medieval drama. So in 479, let me get that date right. Let me get the date right for the fall of Rome. 476. So in 476 AD, Rome fell. And after Rome fell, most of the power structure that held Europe together fell. So after the fall of Rome, you have basically life in Europe was very centered around the Christian religion, specifically Catholicism. So all of the plays, most of the plays during this time are very moralistic and emphasize the importance of religious life. They focus on the mysteries of religion, of Bible stories, and they are very much like a reinforcement of religious morality, basically. There's not really much else that we could say about that. But then we have the Renaissance. And the Renaissance is one of the cooler time periods in history, in my opinion. Renaissance is a French word. It means rebirth. It's when we dug out all of the classical ideals and brought them back into society. We had the philosophy of the ancient Greeks, the literature of the ancient Greeks and of the Egyptians, and all sorts of stuff come screaming back into our focus. And this, coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, is the golden age of theater. Lots of rich, noble people, including Queen Elizabeth I and King James, King Charles as well, funded a lot of plays and playwrights. Queen Elizabeth is known to have, for example, funded Shakespeare and also Christopher Marlowe and some other people. We're going to read Marlowe. So this is what I would call the golden age of theater. And most of the great plays that you know that aren't modern come from this time. So this is where you get Shakespeare and stuff like that. So scholars attribute setting, Christopher Marlowe, who we're going to read, was setting the standard for poetic structure for drama. He also adapted the ideas of what it means to be a moral human being for a Renaissance audience. William Shakespeare often took elements from many different sources to combine them into one work. He's often accused of plagiarism, but it didn't really exist at the time. He really just lifted old Greek and Roman stuff and used those as kind of framework for his plays. And then kind of really his emphasis is about his own linguistic contribution. Shakespeare invented a lot of different words. People don't know this, but it's true. After Elizabeth's death, we have King James. And some stuff from the Elizabethan period shifted to the Jacobean period. The ideas of heroism became cynical and tragedy became melodrama. Then we have Ben Jonson, who developed the comedy of humors, which is a type of comedy that centered around one character who possessed one excessive trait or humor. He later used satire to make fun of his rivals, including the Puritans, who we will learn about shortly. The Caroline period marked the reign of King Charles I. The plays during this time became more sensational and violent to reflect the climate of court and political upheaval. John Webster's The Duchess of Malfi emphasizes the tendencies through presentations of general destructiveness and ideas about the evils of humanity. So then we have the Restoration. That takes place in 1660 to 1900. In 1642, the English Civil War began and the Renaissance ended. King Charles was beheaded in 1649, and the Puritans took control of the government. Oliver Cromwell was the ruler for most of this time, and his son took over when Cromwell died. And from 1642 to 1660, the Puritans outlawed the theater. They saw the theater as a social corruption. For one, pretty much every part in the play was played by a male, even like Juliet or some other female. It was usually like a man in drag. So that was seen as a corruption. It was seen as a corruption that there were lots of risque jokes, and there was a lot of revelry and partying and things that the Puritans didn't like. But with the Glorious Revolution in 1660 and the return of the monarchy, it marked also the return of the theater. And so Restoration drama, heroic drama, and pathetic drama come into play. Restoration drama occurred during the Restoration period, which is 1660 to 1710. And it blended the conventions of previous English drama with that of French and Italian theater. This is where you start to see female characters appearing on stage. So, yeah, Then basically we have, after that, we have the Victorian drama. It's not a great time period for theater, Victorian era. The Victorian era, I always refer to it like a mullet. Mullet haircut, business in the front, party in the back. It was a very prim and proper and like almost like conservative, or you might even say repressed society on the surface. But under the surface, it had lots of demons, basically. There was a lot of drug use, a lot of prostitution, a lot of sort of questionable behavior. So even though the art of the time dealt with a lot of spiritual themes, there was still an underscore of like humanness, right? Of just sort of being kind of subjected to sin and sort of things like that. So it's not the greatest period for theater. Then we have the modern time. The main thing about modern drama is that is a much bigger focus on realism. We're not really talking about, the angels and demons and monsters and all this stuff. It's more about real life and producing plays that reflected real life. And so playwrights believe that no subject matter should be excluded. They wanted to shock audiences and focus on economic injustice, sexual double standards, unhappy marriages, STDs, religious hypocrisy. It's a very real, sort of gritty, down-to-earth kind of way. Most of it. You also have existentialists influencing theater, and you have theater of the absurd. It kind of plays about nothing that mirror the absurdity of life that the existentialist philosophers saw in their own daily lives. And so these are really the main eras of excuse me, theater. We also have musical theater, which comes into play here, and this is where you kind of get the musical that we all know today. So that kind of catches us up. So theater has lots of different epochs or ages, just like any other art form does. And so that's one thing that you might want to be aware of. What era does the play you are reading come from? That's a good question. So let's talk about tragedy versus comedy. All right, you see these two masks here? You probably see these two masks, seen these before. If you've ever been to a play or seen a play, or maybe you've put a play on, you know these well, right? They are meant to be two different types of play, but they're really kind of cut of the same cloth. They're two sides of the same coin. Both tragedies and comedies continue to appeal to audiences because they speak to different aspects of what it means to be human and explore the world around us in different ways. The tragedy and comedy masks provide a visualization for these dramatic genres. The masks are well-known symbols for the theater, and they suggest that while tragedy and comedy are inherently different or opposite, they are also closely tied together. They are two sides to the same coin. Tragic plays present a serious conflict between a protagonist and some other force, often demonstrate the themes of death and separation. The protagonist is usually considered a tragic hero because the hero is destined to fail in achieving a main goal. The tragic hero is often alienated from the rest of the society. Overall, tragedies depict strong human emotion that large audiences should be able to understand. The tragic ending is inevitable and often emotional, leading to inspire more feeling in the audience rather than a call to think about issues. Many of the tragic concepts come from ancient Greece. The word tragedy means goat song, in honor of the goat skin clothing worn by the performers. Aristotle claimed that tragedy seeks to generate feelings of pity and fear. Tragedies usually follow a simple formula. A protagonist has a reversal of fortunes, and the story ends in disaster. While the formula is simple, playwrights can interpret that formula in many ways. Shakespeare's tragedies all follow this formula, but none of the plays have the same plot, types of characters, or even generate the same feeling. Just like other genres, tragedies are flexible, and not all tragedies use the same conventions like blood, gore, or multiple murders. The way that a dramatic tragedy differs from real-life tragedy lies in the central person to the tragedy. In real life, events like the death of a child are considered tragedies. While this type of event does bring suffering, they tend to happen to people who are innocent or who had no say in the outcome. In dramatic tragedies, the events unfold through the weakness of the hero. This is usually called the tragic flaw. We talked about Aristotle's tragic form. The 6 elements were plot, characters, theme, language, music, and spectacle. And then we have a comedy. Broadly, dramatic comedy means anything that makes audiences laugh. A comedy may refer to an entire play, like Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, Or comedy may only appear in part of a play, like many scenes with the nurse in Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is hysterical, but it is considered a tragedy. The first half of it in particular, I mean, I laugh if it's put on well, I laugh so hard that I get tears in my eyes sometimes if they do it correctly. Comedic plays also seek to make audiences think instead of feel. Comedies usually comment on society instead of focusing on the failings of one character, like tragedy. These types of plays produce stories and characters that celebrate what it means to be human. The main characters in these plays change or develop in ways that present a tragic ending. This change usually happens at the last moment, and an example is Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, which we will read, where the fairies of the play correct the mistake made against the human characters, and everyone ends up with the people they love. Without this correction, the humans would just continuously chase after each other and hurt each other through rejection. The word comedy comes from a Greek word that means a revel. The idea stems from Dionysus, our god of wine and revelry. Gotta love the god of wine and revelry, right? Sorry if I'm going a little hoarse. My allergies are really tough right now. Yeah. So comedies have different conventions. They tend to use follies, unions, or reunions, and celebrations. Excuse me. Okay. High and low comedy. Comedies are often divided into high and low comedy. High comedy utilizes wordplay and wit, and low comedy employs physical and visual gags and verbal comedy that do not require higher intellect to understand. High comedy relies on its audience's intelligence by focusing on the hypocrisy of human behavior. This type of comedy usually avoids physical or visual humor. One type of high comedy is the comedy of manners, which is usually a satire that criticizes the elite or high-class society. One convention of high comedy is the epigram, or a brief and witty statement that expresses the truth. Oscar Wilde used epigrams in many of his plays, like "I can resist everything except temptation" from a Lady Windermere's fan. That's pretty funny. Low comedy explores physical and visual humor instead of high comedy's verbal wordplay. Low comedy embraces drunkenness, stupidity, lust, clumsiness, and insults. Low comedy plays make fun of anything that will generate a laugh from the audience. While many critics of modern film tend to dismiss low comedy, this type of play does have value because it does focus on the failings of humanity in certain situations. Even playwrights like Shakespeare use low comedy in serious plays. In Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare includes scenes devoted to sexual and crass humor. A lot of people don't realize how risque Shakespeare is. He's actually kind of vulgar, and it's just a lot of times you don't get the jokes. But if you analyze it and pick it apart, you're like, oh wow, did he really go there? And a lot of times he did. So maybe two other things we'll touch on: satiric comedy. Satire is using humor, irony, and ridicule to generate usually like a political or social point. So comedies that mark human weakness or folly from an enlightened perspective is satiric comedy. This type of comedy tends to criticize people, manners, and morals. An example of satiric comedy is Aristophanes' Lysistrata, where women stop a war by refusing to sleep with their husbands. Romantic comedy, while traditional, romantic comedy is more subtle than other forms of comedy. The main characters are usually lovers, and the play ends in a union between the lovers, sometimes a marriage, but it doesn't have to be. And there'll be a lot of jokes and stuff that are very subtle. So this is like Harry Met Sally, right? Hitch, that kind of thing. We all know the rom-coms that have been adapted to film. So now I'm going to have to ready my voice here. I'll take a sip of water, which I need to open a new water. Sorry for the noise pollution, because I am preparing to read a short play to you, and hopefully I won't make a complete fool of myself, or maybe hopefully I will, because that will probably help. This is called the 15-minute Hamlet. So it's funny because Hamlet as a play is like 4 hours long if you're lucky. And so let me go back to the dramatis personae. And so to condense it to 15 minutes is a joke in and of itself. This was written by Tom Stoppard, who is an existentialist playwright. He's a theater of the absurd guy. He wants the theater to reflect what he views as the absurdity of life and the existential dilemma that we all find ourselves in being alive. And so it's just kind of funny. I will read through it. I'll do the different voices to the best of my ability. And I will stop periodically and explain what's going on. So here we have the dramatis personae. Now, several people play like 4 different parts. Marcellus, Bernardo, Laertes, and Horatio. Then there's Francesco, Osric, Fortinbras, the Gravedigger, Ghost, and Horatio. Then there's Ophelia, Gertrude, Hamlet, Shakespeare, Claudius, and Polonius. But they've divided a lot of those smaller parts into a single person, or like a single person has like 3 to 5 parts. Okay, so if you don't know the story of Hamlet, it's basically the story of the Lion King. In fact, the Lion King is largely considered to be an adaptation of Hamlet. So the short and narrow of it is this. The king's brother kills the king in his sleep and takes over his throne, and the son of the king goes through a brooding crisis where before he finally comes back and slaughters everyone. Now, Simba does not slaughter everyone, but there is that sort of triumphant return where he beats up Scar and everything. So it's kind of the same thing. There are a lot of parallels. Zazu is Polonius, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Timon and Pumbaa, Ophelia is Nala, etc., etc. Okay, but it is, to be fair, Shakespeare is much darker. So Shakespeare himself comes out at the start of this and kind of just says all of the like major lines of the play. So he's kind of performing the function of the chorus in a way. It's kind of like an introduction, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But again, it's theater to the absurd. So here we go. For this relief, much thanks. Though I am native here, and to the manor born, it is a custom more honored in the breach than in observance. Well, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. To be or not to be, that is the question. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. There's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. I must be cruel only to be kind. Hold, as it were, the mirror up to nature, a countenance more in sorrow than in anger. Now, this is what's called like a stage direction or something that happens. This is the lady in the audience shouts rotten, so I'll go ahead and do that. Rotten! The lady doth protest too much. Cat will mew, and dog will have his day. He bows again and exits. A castle battlement. Thunder and wind. 2 guards, Bernardo and Marcellus, and Francesco Horatio enter. Who's there? Nay, answer me. Long live the king. Get thee to bed. For this relief, much thanks. What, has the thing appeared again tonight? Peace break thee off. Look where it comes again. Looks it not like the king? By heaven, I charge thee, speak. 'Tis here. 'Tis there. 'Tis gone. But look, the morn in russet mantle clad walks o'er the dew of yon high eastern hill. Let us impart what we have seen tonight unto young Hamlet. So these guards have seen something on the castle battlements, which is like the wall outside where you shoot arrows from. And the thing they have seen is the ghost of Hamlet's father. So they have seen the ghost of Hamlet's father, and they're like, whoa, that's spooky, and they want to go and tell Hamlet about it. All right, a room of state within the castle. A flourish of trumpets as Claudius and Gertrude enter. All right. Though yet of Hamlet, our dear brother's death, the memory be green. Hamlet enters. Sometimes, sister, now our queen have we taken to wife. But now my cousin Hamlet and my son, a little more than kin and less than kind. This is Hamlet talking. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, that it should come to this, but 2 months dead, so loving to my mother, frailty, thy name is woman, married with mine uncle, my father's brother. The funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables. So what he's saying is that his dad died and his mom wasted no time in marrying his uncle. So when he says the funeral baked meats did coldly furnish forth the marriage tables, it means like they didn't wait like 2 weeks before they got married after his father died. So he's obviously not very happy about this. He feels betrayed by his mother, betrayed by his uncle, and as we find out later, there's a little more under the surface going on than he realizes. So in comes Horatio. My lord, I think I saw him yesternight, the king your father, upon the platform where we watched. 'Tis very strange. Armed, my lord, a countenance more in sorrow than in anger. My father's spirit in arms? All is not well. Would the night were come. Hamlet and Horatio exit the parapet. Okay. Scene 3. The castle battlements at night. There is the noise of carousing, cannon, fireworks. Horatio and Hamlet appear on the parapet. The king doth wake tonight, and takes his rouse. Though I am native here, and to the manor born, it is a custom more honored in the breach than in observance. There is the sound of wind. Look, my lord, it comes! Angels and ministers of grace defend us. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Alas, poor ghost! I am thy father's spirit. Revenge is foul and most unnatural murder. Murder? The serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. Oh, my prophetic soul, mine uncle! So the ghost of his father has told him, like, yeah, my brother killed me and took my crown, and so you need to revenge me. So this is a play about revenge. Guess what Hamlet's tragic flaw is? Revenge. Okay, the ghost exits to Horatio. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Horatio exits. Hereafter I shall think meet to put an antic disposition on, meaning he's gonna fool them into thinking he's losing his mind. The time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. Hamlet exits. Scene 4. A room within the castle. There is a flourish of trumpets, leading into flute and harpsichord music. Polonius enters, and immediately Ophelia rushes on. How now, Ophelia? What's the matter? My lord, as I was sewing in my chamber, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all unbraced, no hat upon his head, pale as a shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous he comes before me. Mad for thy love? I have found the very cause of Hamlet's lunacy. We, of course, know that Hamlet's putting on, but they think he's acting crazy for some other reason. Hamlet enters as Ophelia exits. Look where sadly the poor wretch comes reading. What do you read, my lord? Words, words, words. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. I am but mad north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. The actors are come hither, my lord. Now, this is another common theme in Shakespeare, the play within the play. Shakespeare's always doing this. You'll read a play, and the people in the play will be putting on a play. And it makes this weird meta thing, and then you start wondering, am I in a play? Am I in a play, reading a play, where they're playing a play within a play? It kind of fries your brain if you think about it too much. We'll hear a play tomorrow. I have heard that guilty creatures sitting in a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck to the soul, so to the soul, that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before mine uncle. If he but blench, I know my course. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. So his plan is he's going to put on a play about his uncle killing his father, and his uncle's going to be watching it. And when he sees the play about him killing his own brother, he's going to freak out, and then Hamlet's going to know for sure that he's the one who did it. To be or not to be, he puts a dagger to his heart. Claudius and Ophelia enter. That is the question. My lord, get thee to a nunnery. Okay, that's very funny. That scene is actually a lot longer, but Ophelia and Hamlet are like betrothed, or they're in love, and he's losing his mind and like doesn't really love her anymore, or is treating her poorly. And so he tells her to get to a nunnery, meaning go and be a nun and like accept celibacy and chastity, and don't try to come after my love anymore. It's kind of a mean thing to say. Love? His affections do not that way tend. There's something in his soul o'er which his melancholy sits on brood. He shall with speed to England. Claudius exits. A hall within the castle. A flourish of trumpets heralds the entrance of Hamlet and Ophelia, Marcellus and Horatio, who are joking together, Claudius and Gertrude. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, triplingly on the tongue. Hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature. Everyone sits to watch the imaginary play. Mask music is heard. To Gertrude. Madam, how do you like the play? The lady doth protest too much, methinks. He poisons him in the garden for his estate. You shall see anon how the murderer gets the love of Gonzago's wife. Claudius rises. The king rises. Music stops. Hubbub noise starts. What? Frightened with false fire? Claudius exits, re-enters at the side as Polonius. All of them say, give over the play! Lights, lights, lights! I'll take the ghost's word for £1,000. So Claudius saw the play, saw what was happening, got freaked out and left, and then Hamlet's like, yes, the ghost was telling me the truth. You're the one that killed my father. I know it. And I know I have to get my revenge on you. So exit all except Polonius. He's going to his mother's closet. Behind the arras I'll convey myself to hear the process. Now, Polonius in The Lion King is Zazu. He's like the advisor to the king. He's an old windbag. you know, the one that's always telling Simba, like, oh, you have to do this and that, and I'm your father's advisor. Like, that's basically his whole vibe. And Hamlet says, the queen's apartment. Polonius slips behind the arras, which is like a curtain. He's like hiding in the room behind a curtain to eavesdrop on their conversation. Lute music is heard. Hamlet and his mother Gertrude enter. Now, mother, what's the matter? Hamlet, thou hast thy father much offended. Mother, you have my father much offended. He holds her. What wilt thou do? Thou wilt not murder me. Help, help, ho! And then from behind the arras, Polonius says, help! Then Hamlet goes, how now, a rat? He stabs Polonius through the curtain. Doesn't even know who it is. He just, with the sword. Dead for a ducat, dead! Oh me, what hast thou done? Nay, I know not. Alas, he's mad. I must be cruel only to be kind. Good night, mother. Hamlet exits, straggling Polonius. Gertrude exits, sobbing. The arras is dropped. Another room in the castle. Flourish of trumpets as Claudius and Hamlet enter. Now, Hamlet, where's Polonius? At supper. Hamlet, this deed must send thee hence. Therefore prepare thyself. Everything is bent for England. And, England, if my love thou hold'st at aught, thou mayst not coldly set our sovereign process, the present death of Hamlet. Do it, England. So he's going to kill, he's asking England to kill Hamlet on his behalf because he doesn't want to bloody his own hands. So that's what's happening here. He's like, I know that Hamlet killed Polonius, but I don't want to execute him because it'll look bad. So I'm going to send him away to England. They'll quietly execute him on my behalf, and then I'll get rid of the guy this way. That's the plan. Okay. So interlude at sea, sea music. Now, sea music could be a lot of things. It could be like, you know, a sea shanty. But I like to think that it's the crab from The Little Mermaid. Under the sea, under the sea. You can say whatever, but there's sea music, and so it's like it just shows the boat like they're crossing the water. That's the transition. Scene 8. Yet another room in the castle. Flourish of trumpets as Claudius and Laertes enter. Where is my father? Dead. Okay, very abrupt and funny. If you do that right on stage, it's a very funny line. Ophelia enters in a mad trance, singing. Lute music is heard. They bore him barefaced on the bier. Hey, nonny, nonny, hey, nonny, and on his grave rained many a tear. Oh, heat dry up my brains. Oh, kind sister. Ophelia falls to the ground. So she dies. Actually, in the actual play, she goes crazy, and then because Hamlet doesn't love her anymore, and she runs off and like drowns. She drowns in a river. But in this, she just like falls over. And then Laertes says, Hast thou thy wits and didst persuade revenge, it could not move thus. And Claudius says, And where the offense is, let the great axe fall. Claudius and Laertes exit. A gravestone rises to hide Ophelia. A bell tolls 4 times. Now we're in a churchyard. The gravedigger and Hamlet enter. Ere we were 2 days old at sea, a pirate of very warlike appointment gave us chase. In the grapple I boarded them. On the instant they got clear of our ship, so I alone became their prisoner. They have dealt with me like thieves of mercy. What is he that builds stronger than either the mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter? A grave maker. The houses he makes will last till doomsday. Gravedigger gives the skull to Hamlet. Whose was it? This same skull, sir, was Yorick's skull, the king's jester. The jester is like a joker, somebody that makes the king laugh, but now he's dead, so that's kind of weird. Alas, poor Yorick. He returns the skull to the gravedigger. But soft, that is Laertes. He withdraws to the side. Laertes enters. What ceremony else? Lay her in the earth, and from her fair, unpolluted flesh may violets spring. I tell thee, churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling. Hamlet says, What, the fair Ophelia? Oh, treble woe! Hold off the earth a while till I have caught her once more in my arms. All right, so that was Ophelia's funeral. They're all very sad. Hamlet re-enters. What is he whose grief bears such an emphasis? This is I, Hamlet the Dane. The devil take thy soul, they grapple. Away their hand! Claudius and Gertrude pull them apart. Claudius and Gertrude together. Hamlet, Hamlet! I loved Ophelia. What would thou do for her? Oh, he is mad, Laertes. Oh, sorry, that's Gertrude. Oh, he is mad, Laertes. Claudius and Gertrude and Laertes exit. Hamlet says, The cat will mew, and dog will have his day. Hamlet exits, and the gravestone is dropped. Scene 10. Hold on. A hall in the castle. A flourish of trumpets as Hamlet enters. There is a divinity that shapes our inn, rough hew them how we will. But thou wouldst not think how ill all's here about my heart. But 'tis no matter, we defy augury. There is a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be now, 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all. So he's kind of losing his mind. And he's talking about augury, which is like the interpretation of bird signs. Like in the ancient world, they used to see birds and they would be like, oh, that means it's going to rain on Tuesday, stuff like that. It was like a weird form of mysticism. Okay. Come on, sir. And then Laertes says, come, my lord. A fanfare of trumpets. Laertes and Hamlet draw swords and duel. One. No. Judgment. A hit. A very palpable hit. Stay, give me a drink. Hamlet, this pearl is thine. Here's to thy health. He drops a pearl into the goblet. Give him the cup. So he's like trying to poison Hamlet. Then Gertrude says, the queen carouses to thy fortune, Hamlet. She takes the cup. Claudius goes, Gertrude, do not drink. She says, I will, my lord. She drinks. My lord, I'll hit him now. Hamlet and Laertes grapple and fight. Part them. They are incensed. They bleed on both sides. Osric and Claudius part them. Osric exits. I am justly killed by my own treachery. Laertes falls. Gertrude says, the drink, I am poisoned. She dies. Hamlet says, treachery, seek it out. Then Fortinbras enters. Fortinbras is like this random character that comes in at the end. It's so bizarre. Then Laertes says, it is here, Hamlet. Hamlet, thou art slain. Lo, here I lie, never to rise again. The king's to blame. Then Hamlet realizes that he's going to die because the sword has been poisoned. He says, the point and venom too? Then venom to thy work. He kills Claudius, so he stabs his uncle. God, it's very dramatic. Then Laertes says, exchange forgiveness with me, noble Hamlet. He dies. Hamlet says, I follow thee. I cannot live to hear the news from England. The rest is silence. He dies. Fortinbras says, good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. He turns to face away from audience. Go, bid the soldiers shoot. 4 shots are heard from off stage. All stand, bow once, and exit. Now is the encore. A stagehand enters with a placard bearing the legend Encore. He parades across the stage and exits. A flourish of trumpets. Claudius and Gertrude enter. Also, okay, so what this is now, this is funny. They're going to do the whole thing in like 3 minutes now. So this is like the super condensed version. And so it's an encore. It's like, more, come back. So then they do it all again really fast. It's very funny. I've seen this actually put on before, and it's very, very funny. So Claudius says, "Our sometime sister, now our queen." Hamlet enters. "Have we taken to wife?" Hamlet says, "That it should come to this." Claudius and Gertrude exit. There's the sound of wind. Horatio enters. "My lord, I saw him yesternight. The king, your father." Hamlet says, "Angels and ministers of grace defend us." He exits, running through the rest of the speech. "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." He's like running off the stage. It's very funny. The ghost enters above. "I am thy father's spirit. The serpent that did sting thy father's life." Hamlet enters above. "Now where's his crown?" "Oh, my prophetic soul, hereafter I shall think to meet to put an antic disposition on." They exit. Short flourish of trumpets. Polonius enters below. Polonius, running. "Look where sadly the poor wretch comes." Polonius exits, running. Hamlet enters. "I have heard that guilty creatures sitting in a play have been, by the very cunning of the scene, been struck." Claudius, Gertrude, Ophelia, Marcellus, and Horatio enter joking, all sit to watch the imaginary play. "If he but blench, I know my course." Mask music, Claudius rises. "The king rises! Give over the play!" Exit all except Gertrude and Hamlet. "I'll take the ghost's word for 1,000 pounds. Polonius enters and goes behind the arras. Short flourish of trumpets. "Mother, you have my father most offended. Help! Help! Ho! Dead for a ducat! Dead!" So he stabs Polonius. Short flourish of trumpets. Claudius enters, followed by Hamlet. "Hamlet, this deed must send thee hence. Do it, England." I'm having fun. I don't know about you guys. Claudius exits. Ophelia enters and falls to the ground. The gravestone rises to hide Ophelia. A bell tolls twice. Gravedigger and Hamlet enter. "A pirate gave us chase. I alone became their prisoner." He takes the skull from the gravedigger. "Alas, poor Yorick! But soft!" He returns the skull to the gravedigger. "This is I, Hamlet the Dane. Gravedigger exits. Laertes enters. The devil take thy soul! They grapple, then break. Osric enters between them with swords. They draw. Claudius and Gertrude enter with the goblets. Come on, sir! Laertes and Hamlet fight. Pause. A hit, a very palpable hit. Give him the cup. Gertrude, do not drink. I am poisoned! She dies. Hamlet, thou art slain. He dies. Then venom to thy work. He kills Claudius. The rest is silence. He dies. 2 shots are heard off stage. Curtain. All right. So hopefully that'll give you some idea of how to read a play, the script, the scene as it's described, the stuff that's happening, the props, the stage directions. And you can see how this is meant to be performed, but we can learn how to interpret it as well. So moving forward, we have one comedy, one tragedy that we're going to do. The comedy is, we're going to start with the tragedy, actually. The tragedy is The Tragical History of Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. The comedy is The Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. So I hope that you found this lecture informative and somewhat amusing, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good week.